Hi, welcome back to another episode of Coldstream Rod Shop. I'm Derek Fraser. In this week's video, we're working still again on the 32.5 window New York Coupe. Project is actually coming close to an end. The scope of the project has changed a little bit. The owner's decided that he wants the car back in this metal condition with all the wood back into it. He's not going to work on this frame at the moment, so this car is going to go back to him. He has other plans for it. The frame is staying here. The frame is actually what we're going to build the 32 Roadster we introduced a couple weeks ago that came in. It's ultimately going to be used to build the Roadster on it. In this week's video, there's all kinds of little things. I've been walking around with pieces of masking tape, putting little spots on the car where I found like little pinholes, little tiny bodywork to do here and there. That I kind of mentioned it before. All of the wood inside around the windows, I've got to pull that out. There's a couple pieces of wood I have to replace and then install all of the wood that we made on them quite a few episodes ago. When we did the Moncton Coupe, we made a full set of wood for the top and wood that goes above the doors and then wood for the back window. The only one we didn't do is the ones around these quarters, but I've done those before, so we'll get working on that. One thing I started on was I started working on the dash in here. I don't know if the camera lady can see or not, but essentially the dash is held in place by a bunch of 12-24 screws. I was only able to get 2 of those out, so basically, heated them up and put nuts on the top of them, and only 2 screws came out. The rest of them I had to basically grind the tips down, drill holes through them, and then retap the holes out. So the dash is just wired wheel right now, take just the surface rust off of it. Everything's tapped. There's brand new 12-24 screws in there holding it in place. And then, like I said, there's just a whole bunch of little things. So I'll probably make a list like I did when we did the Moncton Coupe, and then actually start knocking them off and getting this ready to go. It looks like it's going to get picked up in maybe 2 or 3 weeks from now and go back to the owner for its next part in life, I guess. So watch along as we wrap it up on the New York Coupe. So there's 2 pieces I have to make for the trunk on the 5-window Coupe. One of them is the door catch, or sorry, the latch catch where it hooks into the body. I was missing that. What I had was the rumble lid one instead of the one for the trunk lid. So here's one I got from a friend. It's a Vintique. I can go online and probably buy it. Not that expensive, but shipping to get here. So what I'm going to try and do is actually make a duplicate of it. So what I've done, I've taken the piece and I've actually put masking tape across the back of it to make a pattern. Could probably measure it and lay it out, but I'm going to try this method. I'm going to peel that masking tape off, put it on a piece of cardboard, and then lay it out on a piece of metal and see if I can bend that up. The second one is on the hold open mechanism. I have an extra piece here that came with one of my Brookville bodies and it was damaged, so I just had to straighten it out. But I'm missing this piece here, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to try and make it by just taking a piece of masking tape and laying it out. I may end up actually measuring it and doing it that way, but for now I'm going to try and give this method a try, and I'll let you know how I make out. Here's the masking tape patterns I was talking about. I was actually able to take the masking tape patterns and transfer them directly to a piece of 1/8 mild steel, sheet metal or plate or whatever you want to call it. I cut them out just with a little grinding mini zip cut wheel. Shaped them out, drilled the holes. Once I had the pieces this shape, then what I did, I just took the pieces of metal and stuck them in the vise and started hammering edge over the time. This is the Vintique one right here. Here is the one that I made. So just measured where the bends were, stuck it in the vise again, bent it over. In some cases, the bends were in excess of 90 degrees. So what I then did, I took a piece of thicker 3/16 plate that's got a 45-degree chamfer onto it. Then what you can do is you can clamp it to that, and it'll allow you to actually tap it over the edge further. My brake is not strong enough to bend these, and the shortness of the dimensions, it wouldn't work. So didn't take very long to do it. I made up 2 of these, a copy of this one. I have to return this to my friend. The hold open mechanism, that's the one that I took off of our Roadster. And then here's the piece that I made for the Coupe over there. Like I said earlier in the video, you can buy these things for a whole lot. They're not that expensive. But the thing is, time is of the essence, unfortunately, here now. By the time I order them, bring them in, shipping and taxes and everything else, it just actually made far more sense to make these up myself, and it didn't take that long to do. So over on the 5-window coupe here, I'll show you. I've got the catch installed. So here it is right here. There's basically 2 sheet metal screws that I put down into the rain catch or drip catch or whatever, and then this is just a 1/4 bolt that goes through there. Now, it isn't as simple as just putting it in. What you have to do is, where this catch comes down, you have to align where the center of that catch is and where this edge is. The second thing, this has to be the right height. So I had to put this up and down several times. When you put it down, you can actually get a piece of wood there. When you set this down, you can actually look through the gap and see where the catch comes down. So you just make a little mark, and then that'll be where the plate goes. And then heights-wise, one thing you can do is you could put washers you could put washers underneath this to move it up or down so it actually fits in the groove here. But what I chose to do is I actually went back to the bench and I took this section here and I just kept tweaking it up until it fit neatly into that gap and there was no play into it. And then I just took a couple pieces of rubber here to simulate the rubber stops that goes in these holes. So now that goes in, it catches and it does what it's supposed to do. Next up, what I have to do is I've got to install this, but there's one more thing I have to make. There's a button. There's a button right here that slides into this. I've got to figure out a way to make that. More than likely, I'm going to take a larger bolt and then turn this down and then retap a hole on a bolt, because I don't have one of those. So as soon as I get one of those done, this is ready to install in the deck lid. So I'll show it to you. Oh, and the other thing, this morning I made my list of all the things we have to do to finish it off. There's quite a few things left to do onto it, so we're going to try and make our way through this and check them off as we go. Do as many of these on this video as we can, and basically get prepared for this 32 5-window coupe to go home. So I've been working away at the various different pinholes. One of the areas I talked about a couple times was this area on the belt line here. The metal was relatively sound, but there was a lot of damage to it. It was pretty bad. What I've been able to do is get behind after the wood was taken out and dolly it out flat enough to basically then put like a little bit of a skim of body fill. Like, the metal on this car is not going to be 100%. The assumption is we're going to get the metal as good as we possibly can, use as much of the original metal as we possibly can, and allow for that potentially 16th inch of body fill, or worst case 1/8 inch of body fill to go in a certain area, and then basically bring your lines back again. Otherwise, we're into hours and hours and hours more and replacing more metal. So this area, I dollied it out, nice shape. There were a couple pinholes on the side, got that fixed up. There was a bunch of other masking tape spots I did around the rest of the car where I had seen, pinholes. They're all welded up now. Everything's good there. So after this, as I said, I took the rest of the wood out. So on the back of the car here are the 2 sets of wood that go into the rear windows. The top half, the top two sections here, I'm happy with. I think they're going to be recoverable. What I'll do is I'm going to go into the wood shop later. I'm going to make two new bottom pieces, because the bottom pieces, because water sat in them, they're just basically dry rot. I did notice that on these rear window pieces versus the Moncton Coupe, these are put together with wooden dowels, versus the Moncton Coupe, which is the same year, they were actually the three pieces that were actually screwed together. So in this case here, I'll duplicate what this car has, make two new pieces for the bottom and two new wooden dowels, and I'll get those fixed up and get them ready to go in. I'll probably sand or lightly sand the rest of the wood, take all the nails out, and put a coat of just one coat of urethane onto it so that it just kind of seals it up a little bit. More than likely this car will never see any kind of inclement weather or whatever, but just the same, we'll just put a clear coat on it. The two vertical pieces that went into the rear door, I took those out, and much like the rear window pieces, they were put together differently. They were actually a mortise and tenon joint that went up into the upper piece versus, so there's the tenon, versus on the Moncton Coupe, it was just an overlap joint with the screw. So I made these pieces already in a previous episode. I didn't finish this end because I recognized there was differences, so I'll finish those off and get those ready to put in as well. Now, the camera lady wants to come over here. What I was asked to do, the areas where the wood goes, which is going to be covered over, because I'm going to be putting the wood in before this goes back to the customer, I was asked to put a coat of POR 15 over the areas that are going to be covered up by the wood. Anywhere where there was basically welds or whatever, I put seam sealer on the welds so everything's sealed on the inside. So, you know, all the wood is going to go in this car when it goes back to the customer. The outside is going to be in the metal condition. This top piece here, I will come in with my metal sander, or not my metal sander, my wood sander, and I'll buff this, make sure all the nails are out, and I'll put a little clear coat on this. But this top wooden piece there's no sense removing it because it's in exceptional condition. There's no dry rot on it whatsoever. So I'm going to carry on with those things. They're still working away on the list of things to do. Got about a little more than a third of them knocked off so far, and then we're going to push this to the finish. So here we are in the shop. I made up new pieces for the rear window wood. It was only the bottom piece that really needed to be replaced. The bottom pieces had a lot of dry rot along the bottom, so they really structurally weren't sound anymore. They were quite brittle, so they were replaced. This piece and across the top was very sound. Basically hit it with the dual action sander and took the oxide layer off of it and basically put a clear coat over the whole thing. These rear window woods were put together with dowels, as I mentioned before, versus when we did the Moncton Coupe, that wood was put together with screws. So obviously there was a change in 1932. Don't know which was first, but at one point they did it with dowels, and another point they put it together with screws. Nevertheless, has the same effect. We put these back together the way that they were with the dowels. You can see them here. So those are ready to go back into the car. Over here, I've put a clear coat on the top bows. There's 3 of them, and a clear coat on the wood above the doors. You can watch how I made these in a previous episode. We'll put a link at the end of the video. When we did the Moncton Coupe, we actually made up 2 sets of wood so that we could have something to put on the New York Coupe that we're doing now. There is the top wood, top roof wood, sorry about that. Have a single, well actually 2 coats of exterior grade urethane on that now. So that will be ready to go in the car here shortly. I still have to cut the tenons on the top of the rear window wood. So here is the original. You can see there how there's a tenon on it. And as I mentioned before, you know, I made these pieces up so that I could put them together one way or the other. So again, there was a difference in the way the rear window wood was put together. In the Moncton Coupe, that was basically a lap joint with a screw. In this particular case, it's a mortise and tenon joint with a screw going through it. So I'm going to duplicate the way that this one was put together. Anyways, watch along. I'll be putting this in the car here shortly. I'll show you how it goes in. Here is the first side of the wood above the door in. There's a little bit of work to putting it in. I will try and show you the best I can here what you got to do. So there's two bolts that go up. They're carriage bolts that go up through the B pillar and meet into the top. And on the top of it, I think you can see here, there's a little plate. You kind of have to get this bolt in first, kind of get this fit loosely in. The other thing in the front here where it goes into the cowl, a lot of times when you buy the aftermarket wood or you make them yourself, you've got to trim this so that it fits in there nice and tight. And then there's two screws. I don't know if we can see them or not, but right there, they go up through and go into place. So when you're fitting this, don't put those in. Put this in first. Then you've got to basically prop in the rear window wood and get your bolts in place. Once you kind of get it in there, don't be surprised if you got to take the drill and kind of ream the holes out a little bit so the bolts will go through. Not unusual. The wood doesn't fit perfectly. The bodies aren't perfect. But right now, I've got the first piece of wood in. Everything is all tightened up. I've got the 2 bolts and the 2/4 inch bolts in the back. Those are 5/16 bolts. And then, like I said, the 2 original ones are up here, holding this in place. I still have to attach this to here. I think that goes to there. There's a couple screws that go up through here. Sorry about that. Compressor's on. Okay, sorry about that. Now that the compressor stopped, like I said, I have to attach this piece, some screws up across the bottom. Across the back here, I've sanded the top piece of wood and urethaned it, so we're good to go there. At the bottom of the B pillars, like I said before, I didn't replace the B pillars because the wood itself is relatively sound. It's not a structural member. It basically is there to screw or tack in the upholstery. So what I did is I made a piece of filler wood across the bottom. It's glued and screwed in place, so that way the future or the owner will still have something to staple the upholstery to. The wood above the door is a little different. It's structural. The wood, around the window is a little different because it kind of holds it in place. But the wood there in the B pillar is more for, just to attach the upholstery to. So I'm going to carry on. I'm going to work on the rear window wood next. Going to get that hopefully in and urethaned. And then of course we'll do the driver's side over here too as well. And I'll show you that when it's done. So before I put the rear window wood in, I kind of did a dry fit on it. I took these pieces here that I made from the original pieces. Like I said, I made up a couple blanks from the last time I did the 5 window. Cut these tenons up, so I've already dry fitted that out in the car. Just dry fitting this piece and then actually dry fitting it into the metal drip tray that I also made in a previous episode. Not going to go through how I made this one, but we'll try and put a link at the end of the video to show you how I made the drip trays for the back of the 5 window. So right now this is basically at the stage where I'm going to put a clear coat of urethane on it, get it ready to go and get installed in the car. So this is what I mean when I want to fit the top of the wood inside of the forward part of the frame. There's a piece of wood across the bottom here that the metal trim fits up against, which is glued to the top piece. So what I'm doing right now, I'm going back and forth to shop. I can't do it right here, but I've got my hand planes in the shop, and I'm slowly just trimming the edge away so that this is a tight fit. Also, there's a piece of wood here that fits in this groove. So I'm going to go back and forth. It's still a little too tight right now. I'm going to shave a little bit more off. And then basically I want that to the stage where I can just tap that in with the hammer so it's nice and snug. And then it will line up with the holes here. And as I said, from the passenger side, once I get it in there, I'll probably come up from underneath with the drill and just ream the holes out so it fits well. You want it nice and tight. When I take the originals and fit it in there, it's actually very tight going in here, but it's got to be snug tight, so you push it in, and not so tight that you spread things apart too much. So going to keep on working on that. I'll have that in here in a couple minutes. From the time-lapse video, you can see me putting the roof wood in place. I now have the roof bows in place as well. If the camera lady wants to come inside here, we'll do a little bit of a tour of all the different pieces of wood and brackets and stuff that we put in place. I didn't do a time-lapse of all of it. The rear window wood, I've put that in place. As I said, the top piece of wood was in really good shape, so all it got was a light sand and a clear coat. Replaced the vertical pieces and the horizontal piece for the rear window wood. And then, as I showed you previously, the rear drip tray that I made, it's installed, it's in behind the package tray. There's a whole bunch of different brackets that go in here that kind of tie everything together. There's this bracket up top here that ties from the top of the B-pillar to the roof wood. That's in place on both sides. And then this piece across the back here is not really a structural piece. It has a little bit of a structural effect, but basically this piece here is actually for the upholstery to tack onto. The other one I had to attach was this main bracket here that goes from the bottom of the B-pillar up to the window wood. Then there's a small piece of wood across the top of the windshield frame here. This is also not a structural piece, but it's one of the pieces that's original to the body. It was in the best shape. It was the piece that we actually took off and we copied it to do the piece of wood over in the Moncton Coupe on the previous project. So we're kind of really wrapping this up for what the owner wanted us to do. The intention right now, he's asked me to take it off the original frame here, make up a four-wheel cart, and then that way it can go onto the truck when it comes to come pick it up and go back to him and, you know, go on to the next stage of the life of the vehicle. So he has plans for it. As soon as I know some of the details, I'll let you know what they are. But at this point in time, we've pretty much completed everything that the owner wanted us to do. So it's really kind of at the end of the project. I mean, there'll be another video of us, you know, putting it on the dolly and loading it up and sending it on its way and doing kind of a recap of everything we've done to it. To be honest with you, I'm kind of a little bit sad to see it go because it's been here for a long time and kind of been a big part of our lives, working on this, having fun, you know, answering people's comments and talking about it and that. But there's more projects to come. There's a few more people that have asked me to do some work on the chassis. We've got the 40 Plymouth, which is going to start working, and then right beside the camera lady, there's the 32 Ford Roadster. That's our project, so there's lots of stuff to do on that. And then as we introduced there a week or two ago, there's a 32 sedan and an original 32 Roadster body that we've been asked to put together. So there's lots and lots and lots of stuff for us to work on and share with you. So hopefully you enjoyed that video, kind of the conclusion of the 32 New York Coupe. Please like, share, tag, and subscribe. Please send us your comments, and I'll see you next week. Take care.